Okay, let's talk about the big one in blockchain, right? Getting apps that can actually handle like massive numbers of users,
Mm.
millions, billions maybe, without everything just, seizing up. It always feels close, but scalability is still this huge mountain developers are climbing. I know it's something you think about a lot.
Oh, absolutely. Getting past the limits of those early blockchains, it's essential if the tech is going to hit its stride, and the creativity going into solving it now is pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, which brings us right to Saga. It's a layer one, but with a really different take on cracking that scaling nut, the core idea. It's like an L1 for launching other L1s.
Yeah.
We're looking at info from around early April 2024, just for context.
Exactly. So today we're really aiming to unpack how Saga works, why they designed it this way, and, what it could mean, especially for things like gaming and entertainment. Performance there is just non-negotiable, right?
Yeah.
We're pulling this straight from their own documentation.
Right. Okay, so top level.
Yeah.
What is Saga? And these things called chainlets, they sound pretty key.
Okay, so Saga itself is a layer 1 protocol, but its main trick is letting developers basically automatically spin up their own dedicated blockchains, and those are the chainlets. What's really interesting is they're designed to be VM agnostic.
VM agnostic, so you're not stuck with just like the Ethereum virtual machine.
Exactly. You could use the EVM, sure, but maybe Solana's SVM or, whatever comes next. And these chainlets, they're built to run in parallel and talk to each other pretty easily.
Huh. So instead of one big crowded highway where every app is fighting for space, it's like each app gets its own private road. That feels like a pretty fundamental shift.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's basically where they get this idea of infinite horizontal scalability. If your app blows up, gets tons of users, Saga lets you just add more chainlets.
Right, you just provision more.
Yeah, you scale out, not just try to cram more traffic down the same pipe, you lay more pipes.
That's a really neat way to think about scaling. It's less about making the existing road wider and more about just building more roads next to it. And it sounds like people are noticing. The doc said Saga got, 350 projects in under 2 years?
Wow.
And 80% were games. That's, wow.
It really points to a need, doesn't it? Especially for those apps that need serious performance.
Yeah.
And what's also pretty interesting is how they're working with other big players like Polygon, Avalanche, Celestia.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, they're partnering up, helping these other platforms use Saga's chainlet tech to make it easier to launch their scaling solutions, like Polygon CDK chains or Avalanche subnets, even working with big gaming names like MarbleX and Com2US.
So Saga's kind of becoming this, infrastructure layer for other infrastructure.
It certainly looks like that's part of the goal. It shows it's not just an isolated thing, it's plugging into the wider Web3 world.
Okay. Getting a picture of chainlets. But let's zoom in a bit. What makes them tick, specifically, beyond just being dedicated chains?
Well, besides the scaling part, a really big piece is how they handle fees. They talk about costless transactions and low and predictable chain fees.
Costless transactions. How does that work?
Well, maybe not completely free for everyone all the time, but the model is different. Instead of you, the user, paying gas every time, the developer pays for their chainlet's block space. And how much they pay is set by this daily reverse auction among the validators.
A reverse auction. So validators bid on how little they're willing to accept to secure that chainlet.
Kind of, yeah. The idea is to get competitive, sort of commodity pricing for block space, makes it more predictable for devs, and they get to choose how they want to cover that cost. Maybe use their own token, maybe charge in fiat or a stablecoin, give them options.
That is different. More predictable costs, more flexibility for the app's business model. I like that. What else?
Automation is another big one. The docs say developers can launch a chainlet pretty easily just using the Saga web app.
So less heavy lifting on the technical side to get your own chain running.
Supposedly, yeah. Lowering that barrier to entry, which, could definitely spur more experimentation.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And how do these chainlets talk to each other? And to Bitcoin or Ethereum?
Right. Interoperability. That's crucial. They call it interoperability and fast bridging. Saga's built to let assets move smoothly between chainlets and also back and forth between the Saga mainnet and other blockchains.
Automatically.
That's the goal. Automatic interoperability plus fast finality so things don't get stuck in limbo. Super important for games, right? If you need to move an item between different game worlds running on different chainlets.
Yeah, you can't have players waiting minutes for an item transfer.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last point here was fully flexible stack.
Yeah, that just means developers get a lot of control over their own chainlet. Since it's their dedicated space, they can tweak the tech setup to fit exactly what their app needs without being stuck with whatever rules or limits the main shared network might have.
Got it. Bespoke chains, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears to the token, the Saga token. What's its job in all this? What does it do?
Okay, so Saga has a few main roles. First and foremost, it's what developers use to pay the network validators for what? For spinning up and running their chainlets. It's like paying rent for their secured block space.
Right, the operational fuel. Pay Saga, get your chainlets secured. Makes sense. What else?
Second big use is staking. People can lock up their Saga tokens to help secure the whole network. And for doing that, they earn rewards, not just more Saga.
Oh, what else?
They also get tokens from the actual projects that are building on Saga, which is pretty cool, right? It aligns, everyone secures the network and gives stakers a piece of the action from the apps launching there.
Yeah, that is a smart incentive loop. Earn the network token, any tokens, from the ecosystem projects. Okay, and I see governance here too.
Yep. Saga holders get to vote on network decisions, shape where the protocol goes in the future. Because Saga itself, remember, is a fully decentralized proof-of-stake chain. And importantly, every single chainlet gets its security from that main Saga validator set.
So an app doesn't need to worry about building its own security from scratch. It just plugs into the main network security blanket.
Exactly. That's a huge benefit. And just for numbers, the docs mentioned an initial total supply of 1 billion Saga, and around April 2024, about 90 million were expected to be circulating initially. Gives you a sense of the scale.
Good context. Okay, so that's the token. Now, architecture. How does Saga fit together structurally? Can you walk us through the main pieces?
Sure. So the Saga mainnet has two main parts. You've got the security chain. Think of that as the foundation, the first source of security for everything. Then there's the platform chain. That's where developers actually go to launch and manage their chainlets.
Okay, so platform chain is the launchpad, security chain is the guard, and the chainlet itself is where the apps live and users interact.
You got it. And initially, yeah, the focus for chainlets was the EVM Ethereum virtual machine. Just because it's so widely used, lots of tools, lots of devs know it. But the long-term plan, like we said, is full VM agnosticism.
So they could support others down the line.
Right. Pick the best VM for your specific app. It's about flexibility, future-proofing. You're not locked into one tech stack forever. Allows developers to kind of pick and choose the best tools as things evolve.
That flexibility mantra again.
Okay.
Okay, the docs also mentioned something called Saga Realms. What's that about?
Realms. Think of it like Saga provides these building blocks, right? Chainlets are one type of block. Realms are like a framework to automate building other kinds of block space beyond just the standard chainlet.
Other kinds. Like what?
Well, maybe you need a specific setup optimized purely for data availability, not just transactions. That could be a data availability realm, maybe using different tech underneath. So under this realms idea, the normal Saga chainlet is just one type of realm you could spin up.
Oh, okay, so it's a way to generalize the spin up your own block space idea.
Exactly. They even mentioned possibly having F-lets, maybe realms tailored for Ethereum-based chains. It just shows they're thinking broadly about interoperability and custom infrastructure.
Interesting. Okay, let's get a bit more technical. What's under the hood making this work? Core tech concepts.
Well, a big one is that shared security model we touched on. Saga uses its mainnet validators to secure all the chainlets. It's a bit like Eigenlayer's restaking idea, where staked assets can pull double duty, securing multiple things.
Right, so the main staked Saga secures the mainnet and all the individual chainlets that developers launch.
Precisely. That means new apps get strong security right out of the gate without needing to somehow convince thousands of validators to secure their specific small chain. That's a massive advantage.
Yeah, bootstrapping security is famously hard.
Right.
Okay, what else?
Well, we've mentioned the VM agnostic part, flexibility in the execution engine. And then there's this idea of sharding workloads. Developers can actually spread their application across multiple chainlets that are connected.
Sharding within Saga, how does that work?
Imagine a really complex game. Maybe the marketplace runs on one chainlet, a specific game region on another, player profiles on a third. Because they can communicate quickly, the whole game can handle way more activity because the load is spread out. No single chain gets bottlenecked.
Ah, so that's how they actually achieve that horizontal scaling in practice. You can just keep adding more specialized chainlets for different parts of your app as it grows.
Exactly. That distribution is key to the scalability promise.
It makes perfect sense. Okay, let's circle back quickly to the tokenomics. We know the utility, but the distribution. How was that initial billion Saga carved up?
Right. According to the docs from around that time, the allocation looked like this. Binance Launch Pool got 4.5%. Ecosystem and development was a big chunk, 30%. Airdrops were 15.5%. The Foundation Reserve held 10%. core contributors got 20%, and investors also got 20%.
Okay, pretty clear breakdown. And looks like some of those, like ecosystem development and the reserve, have unlocks stretching out for quite a while, past 2031 even. And a bit reserved for future fundraising too, about 6%. Always good to know the release schedule.
Absolutely. Gives you the full picture on supply over time. So, thinking about the future, or at least the future as seen from April 2024, what did the roadmap look like then? What progress had they made?
Well, they'd already ticked off some big milestones. An AlphaNet called Andromeda back in Q3 2022, then Cassiopeia testnet in early 2023, and an incentivized testnet, Pegasus, late 2023, so quite a bit of testing.
Yeah, those test phases are crucial, ironing out the kinks before going live. And the big focus then, naturally, was the mainnet launch, planned for sometime in 2024. They had it broken down into phases.
Right. What were those mainnet phases?
Okay, phase 1 was getting the basic security chain and platform chain up. Phase 2 was about enabling some basic cross-chain validation. Phase 3 was where chainlets would start actually inheriting security from the platform chain.
Okay.
Then phases 4 and 5 were about the security chain validators fully taking over, securing the platform chain itself. And phase 6 was basically the finish line for Saga Protocol V1.
Got it. A step-by-step rollout. Makes sense for something this complex. And outside the tech, we mentioned the Innovator Program, Grow 350 projects. Any other big commercial stuff happening back then?
Yeah, that innovator program was definitely showing traction. Remember, 80% gaming, 10% NFTs entertainment, 10% DeFi. And those partnerships we talked about, Polygon, Avalanche, Celestia, MarbleX, Com2US, those were really significant endorsements.
Right, validation from established players.
Exactly. It showed that other major projects saw value in Saga's approach, wanting to integrate or use its tech.
It really does paint a picture of broad interest. Oh, and there was also Saga Origins mentioned. What was that initiative about?
Right, Saga Origins, that's their own game publishing division. So they're not just providing the tech, they're actively trying to help bring cool Web3 games to market.
Like beyond just giving grants.
Yeah, much more hands-on, helping with influencer stuff, getting users, building communities, marketing, a full package deal, basically.
Huh. So building the roads and helping fill them with traffic?
Yeah.
A pretty comprehensive ecosystem building. And those play-to-airdrop things, like that Three Kingdoms one they did with Avalanche, Polygon, and Solana.
Yeah, seems like a smart way to get people involved, get different communities interacting, and obviously get the Saga name out there while rewarding early users. It all ties into building that active, engaged ecosystem.
This has been really insightful, a good deep dive into what Saga is all about. So if we had to boil it down, what are the main things you think people should take away from this?
I think the absolute key is Saga's whole approach to scaling using these chainlets, these dedicated, easy-to-launch VM flexible blockchains. That's the core innovation. Then there's their clear focus, especially early on gaming and entertainment sectors really crying out for performance. The Saga token is obviously central, paying for chainlets, staking for security and rewards and governance. And, well, it's clear from their roadmap and progress that they were seriously building towards this vision of being a layer one for launching layer ones. It's really about trying to provide that scalable, affordable foundation for whatever comes next in decentralized apps.
Right. Okay, so final thought then, something for you listening to chew on. We've talked a lot about how Saga, with these easily deployable app-specific chains, could be huge for gaming. But think bigger for a second. What if launching your own customized blockchain really does become almost trivial? What other kinds of innovation could that unlock? I mean, beyond games. Could we see truly scalable, decentralized social media? Maybe hyper-efficient, transparent supply chains? Or maybe even new ways to do decentralized science, Dusty? What completely new things become possible when the barrier to having your own dedicated, secure block space just disappears? It kind of makes you wonder what the decentralized future really looks like, and what role platforms like Saga might play in building it.
That's the big question, isn't it? The potential is definitely there to lower barriers and maybe unleash creativity in areas we haven't even thought of yet.
Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
If you want to dig deeper into Saga yourself, their docs mention places like Reddit, Twitter, Discord for finding their community and more info. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.